Hey, I'm Michael Dorinda,
And I'm Jake Bennett.
and welcome to episode 176 of the North Meet South web podcast. Oh,
Oh, no, there it was. I was waiting patiently. I was
I
like, he's
pressed
got
it.
it. I
I did.
believe in
I
you.
pressed it. I pressed it. I was on the money, and you see what the problem was that I had that channel muted on the
Oh, yes.
on the
The
DAC or
old
the
muted
thing.
channel.
I must have muted it by
Yeah.
accident because normally I will mute my microphone when I'm not
Mm-hmm.
working because seeing the level meter bounce up and down out of the
Yeah,
corner of my
drives you
eye over
nuts.
there
Yeah,
distracts me. So
I can
if
imagine
it's
that to be
mute, it
true.
doesn't do that. But yeah, apparently I had the other one there muted, which is it's
Tale as old as time, my
just a
friend.
little bit
Nice.
sad
Okay, I gotta
sad
know,
trombone.
what is it is it a soundboard? What is it? What is it that you have over there?
Oh, I don't know what they call it. It's the Rodecaster Duo.
Roadcaster
Rodecaster
Duo.
Duo. It's what do they call it? It's an integrated production studio.
Okay. And so there's a couple hotkeys and you just assign like an MP3 to those sort of
Yeah,
deal?
so there's pads there that you can assign sounds to and effects and different things like that. So I've just got like the sting there on one of the pads that I press so that it plays at the time.
Roadcaster Duo?
Rodecaster Duo, yeah.
Interesting. Oh yeah, I see it now. Oh yeah, so you got like 6 pads and then you've got like a little mini soundboard sort of deal.
Mm-hmm.
Sweet. Yeah, that looks nice. Did you get the white or the black one?
I got the black one. Yeah, the
Nice,
white one
nice.
was
I
like an
like it.
extra $100 or something. I don't think
Seriously?
I need.
Yeah, another
Yeah.
50 at least. Yeah. Which in AU money is like, yeah, another 100 probably. So
Mm.
not worth it. Not worth it. Speaking of items that we purchase that are I guess so I got a grill. I got a grill and my wife got me the stealth version. So it's the black
Mm-hmm.
version and it's super
Nice.
cool. She got it for me for my birthday. Really excited to put it together. So I haven't put it
Put it
together yet.
together.
It's been
It's
a
been a whole week.
busy week. Dude, it has been a crazy week. It has been a
Mm-hmm.
crazy week. A lot of fun, but it has been a crazy one. So yeah, so
Just partying. You know you're 40 now. You can't just party for a week straight.
I don't know. It was like we had people over and then we had track meets on Friday and Saturday
I saw
and
that.
then yeah,
Graham.
birthday
Graham?
parties on
Yeah, Graham.
Sunday. Yep, Graham, you
Smashed
got
it.
it.
Smashed that
Yeah.
100-meter dash.
Dude, he finished so in sectionals he won first place.
Mm-hmm.
Which was awesome. Beat his personal record by half a second, which doesn't sound like a ton, but yeah, I mean,
No,
it's
but like
I
when you're
don't know
going that
track.
quick, yeah,
Yeah,
to come
I
first, like to this is what we keep telling Eli. It's like this week you just have to be better than you were last week, and
that's
like
right.
what
Yeah,
happens
beat your personal
happens.
best. Yep.
So to beat your personal best and to come out on top is pretty good feeling, I would imagine.
Yeah, that feels great. Yeah, I was losing my mind. I think it's I last year was the first track meet I'd ever been to in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I'd never been
Mm-hmm.
to a track meet before, so I didn't know any of the events. I didn't know. I mean, shot put, sure, I know what that is. Long jump, yeah, okay. But like any of the actual running events, I didn't know what the distances.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything. I didn't know like 4x
And
whatever.
they're
I
in
didn't know what that
meters
meant.
just to throw you. That would have been
They
an
are
adventure.
in meters. Yeah, everything's in meters now. So like I have an appreciation for some of the quick conversions I've had to do or learn how to do in my
Mm-hmm.
head over the time that
Mm-hmm.
we've chatted together. But yeah, so it's been really fun, and so it's sort of the hook got put in deep when Graham won an event. I'm like, oh, okay, now it's serious. You know what I mean? Now
Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
go after it. Let's get this. And so it's been super fun. So he qualified for state in 4 different events, which is pretty cool. And so he
Excellent.
ran in all those, and then their 4x2 relay won in like 7th, which sounds like not, I mean, but it's like 7th fastest in the state. So the top 8 teams in each event get medals, and so their team got a medal and a plaque and stuff, and so
Nice.
that's pretty cool. So it goes in the trophy case at school, and it's exciting.
Nice. So state is it still regional? Like it's still in normal, or do you have to go down to Chicago for that?
So it's actually like 45 minutes west of us, which was very
Okay.
fortunate because a lot of
Yeah.
people were coming down from Chicago to go to this meet, but it was over in Peoria, Illinois. So like half hour, 45 minutes from us. And so
Mhm.
we were lucky that it was so close, but it was on Friday and Saturday. A lot of teams came from further away, just spent the night there. For us, we were able to
Yeah.
go home and,
Mhm.
get some rest and then come back
That's
the next
good.
morning. Yeah. So it was a lot of fun, really fun experience. 250 schools there. So to get like, seventh in the state was pretty cool. So that was pretty fun. I really
Mhm.
enjoyed that. So that
Awesome.
was that was a big part of the weekend, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. So I have not put the grill together yet, but it is on my short list. I was going to do it tonight, but I ran out of time. So I actually was like, crap, I got a podcast because I was going to do it tonight. So,
Yeah.
but
Well, you have to
that's
do it
okay.
tomorrow night now.
Yeah, exactly, no problem. So what have you been up to the last couple weeks since we last talked?
Well, that's a good question. Getting very deep into the weeds with Laracon, preparing to do our brand
Yes.
launch. We're wrapping up. We closed submissions on the 18th. Like that was the date that we said was the close. But time zones, people forget. I don't know. Really, it's on you if you forget. So we've just kept them open. So we're keeping them open until midnight tonight at the time of this recording. But I've put the schedule together. Like I've picked all the talks I think that we're going to have. I'm very happy with how it's come together in terms of like the quality of the submission. It's always a hard thing, right? So we've had more submissions this year than we have ever had, which is amazing. Like you never want to be like, oh, I'll just pick the ones that I got because that's all I got.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
we I think we had like a 9.5% increase year on year in submissions, and like really good submissions to the point where I think I shortlisted half of them.
Nice.
Which sounds like very loosey goosey, like I'm not thinking about it too much. But we had what I wanted to do this year, and maybe I'll talk a little bit about like my process for this. Is that like we get all the submissions in, and I will go through all of them, and I will shortlist them if I think it's a good talk, irrespective
Meaning,
of
meaning you
whether or
just
not.
take them off the big list and put them onto your short list of ones to review for actual
Yeah,
speakers. Yeah. Okay.
yep, yeah. And so even if there's an unrealistic chance that you would submit to like that you would get selected, because like we get lots of international submissions, and I think we try and focus on our local community. We will bring in international speakers, but we limit that because as I said, our focus is Australia and New Zealand, um, and to like Southeast Asia, like in the APAC region. So this is our
Sure.
focus. Um, but I acknowledge that like you want to bring international speakers in as well, just to like fill out. And like sometimes the international, or often the international speakers are more well known, and so
So yeah, I
people,
was gonna say, especially if they're big speakers. Yeah.
yeah. And a lot of the time, it's like people don't have the opportunity necessarily to go to Laracon US, so we try and bring
Yeah.
aspects of Laracon US or Laracon EU to Australia, but
Sure.
it's a
Makes
finite
sense.
list. I don't want to be in a position where I have to ask speakers to pay for their own way. Like we like to make sure that we can cover as much of their travel expenses as practical. And so to do that, we limit the number that we can bring in. So if you're international, a lot of the time, you know, it's very unlikely that you would get to come and speak here off the bat. So we do
Yep.
that. And anyway, so I shortlist half the talks. These are good talks. And part of that is because when we send out our rejection emails, like I want people to know that I thought they had a good talk, and whether they submit again to Laracon AU in 2026 or they submit to Laracon EU or India or US, like I want to encourage them to keep doing it because I think what they have is good.
Right.
So
Right.
a lot of it comes down to we can only bring 4 international speakers. A lot of it is it doesn't fit with like what the overarching theme is in my head or what I think the community is doing. Like this year, Laracon US is very much a we must ship. Like that's their thing, right? Our I'm not ready to talk about ours. I've been dropping it, our theme already, but I'm not going to say what it is because that makes it too easy. Um, but like we have a theme in mind for this year, and so that's in the back of my mind when I'm doing this. So we pick out 4 international speakers, and then I look at New Zealand. Do we have any good submissions from New Zealand? Can we bring some of those in because we have a special carve out in our budget for that? And then we look at okay, once we've narrowed that down, we go to Australia. And then so that knocks the list down from,
Yeah.
half of everyone to
Right.
I think we ended up with like 40 or so talks.
Wow.
And then
That's
it's
so
like,
great.
okay,
Yeah.
so now we categorize. I look at all of those 40 and I go, are they a tech talk? Or are they a soft talk? Are they a business talk? Are they a product talk? Loosely into those categories. Some of them, there's a bit of overlap. Split them out, and then I will just sort them. you know, in what order do I think this is most interesting? Does it fit with like what we're doing this year? Waving my hands a little bit more for anyone that watches this video because it's lots of fun. And so then I get into the list. Okay. And then out of those groups or those categories, I then, once I've shuffled them, okay, these 4 or 5 or these 2 or 3, depending on how many in the category, these are like the green light ones. These are most likely to be picked based on availability of those kinds of talks on the schedule. And then the yellow lights is like, you know, these are the ones that I would consider more of a backup. Like if this person gets an invite but they can't come, you know, let's move down the list kind of thing. So it's an interesting process. And then once that's done and I look at the schedule, so predominantly we want to have technical talks. That's the main thing. This year I've selected 12. I've got 12 on my whiteboard of technical. I've got 3 that are like soft talks and 2 that are product talks. So we skew to technical because, you know, that's the feedback that people generally want technical talks.
Agreed.
But I think there's other things that are important. You know, you need the breakup.
There is,
you know, the mental over the head. You need the mental break. But there's also like other things that are important that kind of broadens the attendee pool a little bit. You know, so it's not just programmers. We've got product people and UX people, and we've got like business leaders and things like that come to the event. So you want to try and cover off predominantly like the developers that are coming, but as much of that entire group as possible. And then comes the fun bit of like, how does this look on the schedule? You know, where do we place these talks? There are, you know, we bookend each day with our international speakers. Day 1, day 2, start and first talk is like an international speaker generally. Depending on where they're coming from, we might like put them together on day 2 so that like they can get things out of the way because they're probably very jet lagged at that point. But we try and spread them out. And then we look at like who are the marquee kind of talks. Like is Laravel talking? Do we need to put, you know, so we've got, okay, Laravel goes where they need to go if they're speaking. And then it's like, okay, how do we run a thread through all of the talks across both days as much as possible to tell a story, which I don't think, it's not apparent to me that other conferences do this, whether other Laracons or other conferences in general. I try and tell a story through all of them, right?
So you have like your segues sort of written out in advance.
Yeah.
So you're like, speaking of this, one thing that you can actually use that for is this next sort of whatever. Yeah. Okay, cool. That makes sense.
And because we put all of the speakers in contact with each other months in advance, they can actually tailor their talks. There's no expectation that they do it. I schedule them in such a way that I think that they like naturally go that way.
They can feed into the next one. Yeah.
But like if someone's talking about something on day 2 or in the afternoon on day 1 that like they know that it refers to something on day 1, we get this connectedness.
Can say, make sure you're there for this talk. You know, they're going to be speaking a little bit more about this. Yeah, that's cool. That's a good idea.
So I think it brings the whole thing together. So, you know, you might have a really, really good talk and miss out just because it doesn't fit with like the general consensus of like all of the other talks that are there. If 80% of the talks are around a similar thing and you're this outlier, it makes it more difficult with that understanding to be part of that schedule.
Or you happen to be talking about the same thing as one of the 4 international speakers, right? It's like you could, you know, sort of deal. Yeah. Yep. Makes sense.
There is, so the first day is very strongly tied together. I think all of the talks really strongly tied together. Day 2 is a bit more of a grab bag because it's very difficult to expect that not knowing, like me not knowing what things are going to look like. And certainly like if you've got hundreds of people submitting individual talks, they've got no idea what else is going to come together. So it's unrealistic to think that like we're going to get 2 full days of very connected talks, but we've got one really solid day. Day 2 is a bit more of a grab bag, but there are bits and pieces that kind of link back to day 1 as well. So I think there's that. So I will send the invitations to the speakers that I have selected tomorrow. They'll have a couple of weeks to kind of get back to it.
Good luck, folks.
Good luck to everyone. By the time this is out, those invitations will have already been sent. So if you've submitted and, you know, good luck. I mean,
You
retrospectively,
should
as I
have.
said, the invitations will
Yeah.
already be out there. So,
Yeah.
but then
You'll
we give
should.
them a couple of weeks just to make sure, like, yes, I can still do it. This is the talk I still want to give. You know, I've not found out that my partner's pregnant and I actually can't travel to
Right.
this
Right.
thing
Right.
because, you know, all of these things can happen. And then hopefully by the end of May, everyone will have accepted their talks. Um, and if not, you know, we'll just go down the list. And then, you know, beginning of June or end of May, beginning of June, we'll send out this year notifications to everyone else who wasn't accepted and just be like, hey, you know, keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
I found that in when we opened CFP this year, I emailed everyone who had ever submitted a talk over the last
Nice. Good idea.
4 years. And we had the information available for the last two of them on whether or not they had been shortlisted. And I got a number of people write back and say, hey, I didn't know that I was shortlisted. That really encouraged me to, you know, submit again. So just want to reinforce that really. That we have diverse voices in the community, we have interesting topics, and even if you don't get picked, it's not like often it's not because your talk is not good enough or it's not interesting. It could be any of those things. Like you might be coming from, you know, Germany or Portugal or Spain or something or Brazil, and it's just, you know, unfortunately those are hotly contested spots, and it's very difficult to place them. It could be that you didn't fit in with the theme of you know what the rest of the schedule was, and it's and like never think that if you submitted a talk it's because your talk was not good enough. That is, in my experience running Laracon AU, it is a very small percentage of talks that are not good. Um, and you know that could be that like the topic didn't grab or the title didn't grab or the abstract was like very, you know, very abstract. I found that we had a lot of people take us up on the pitch video, which I think is really good because sometimes, you know,
Well, that's good. Yeah, I do love that. Yeah, you can
yeah,
kind of see
sometimes
what
you,
they're
yeah,
like, what the
100%.
amount of preparedness they're gonna have, even in like the fact of how well they do their pitch video speaks a little bit to how well they're actually going to do their talk. And then you get a feel for like their personality and their
Hmm.
passion, right?
Hmm.
So much of the speaker being effective is not so much the topic they're presenting on, but the way in which they're presenting it, right? Um, and so yeah, getting to get a little taste of or a little flavor of like their personality and the way that they're going to be presenting, I think is a great idea. That's good.
Yeah.
I'm sure it
Yeah,
increases your chances of getting selected too if you took the time to
absolutely.
do that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know that there are a couple definitely last year and a couple this year that I was like, and then I watched the pitch video. I was like, ah, okay, well that elevates your status in terms of, you know, how well I think that you could communicate this idea, which is obviously the main thing. You know, when you go on that stage, I need to know that you can communicate your idea, that you're going to be well spoken, and that you understand the topic and all of that kind of stuff. So we don't force anyone to do it. You know, not everyone wants to get in front of the camera, but I think you need to understand that you might not like being in front of the camera, but you're going to be on a stage in front of 400 people. So, you know, it doesn't hurt your chances to practice that. So, but yeah, I think I've got the lineup. Um, you know, I was tweeting about it over the weekend as I was working on it. I said, I think I've got it. I'm going to sleep on it. Hopefully, I don't wake up tomorrow morning and look at the whiteboard and hate everything about it and start again, which I did last year 2 or 3 times. But yeah, it's and I was talking to someone this morning. I'm like, I'm having second thoughts. I need to go and change a couple
Just
of
do
talks
it.
out. But
Ship it.
yeah,
Ship it.
so I will wake up
You're
tomorrow morning, and everyone who is on that whiteboard will get their invitation. So
yeah. You
yeah,
were
so that's
talking
been a
about
big focus.
yeah, no, it's awesome. I love to hear the behind the scenes about how it actually is, you know, how you actually put it all together. A lot of work that people don't really realize. They just show up and you're like, oh, this is the set of talks. And it's like, yeah, no, it took a long time to arrive at this. So that's
Mhm.
cool. Thanks for sharing that. I was going to say, you had said that, you know, you like to focus more heavily on technical talks. And I was going to say, you know, you had said the feedback that you've gotten is that technical talks are really what people are hoping to hear. And I would say, yes, I do agree with that. When I go to a conference, that's what I like to hear. However, there is this balance of like, there's technical talks for the sake of technical talk.
Mhm.
You know, Chris Vidal has this one that he refers to often that he gave in his early career,
The
hexagonal
hexagons.
architecture. Yes, hexagonal architecture. And he was like, I mean, I don't even know what I was trying to say. Like I was explaining
Mm-hmm.
it and I understood it, but it didn't make sense to anybody else. And it
Yeah.
wasn't actually super helpful. And so, there's this idea of like technical talks, which is great. I mean, you're
Mm-hmm.
explaining a thing and that's fine. But at the end of the day, what you're really wanting to do is you're wanting to send them home with something that they can attempt to implement on
Actionable.
their own. You don't even necessarily need to explain the whole thing. The goal
Mm-hmm.
of the talk is more to inspire them to try something or to learn more about the thing. You can't
Yeah.
explain typically the entire item in 30 minutes, 40 minutes. You know what I mean? It's more like, hey, let me show you some problems.
Yeah. It's very
Let me show
directional.
you a solution that might work for you in a similar circumstance. And then they're
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, yeah, that actually does sort of apply to this situation. I'm going to go look into that. Right.
Yeah.
Um, and so it all falls sort of to the speaker, which is why what you're talking about, their sort of presentation and even being able to watch previous talks that they've done and things like that helps to inform what's going to be a good speaker. Because even at top events, even at Laracon US, there has to be this certain amount of trust that you're just putting in the speaker to say, I
Yeah.
obviously have not seen the talk that you're going to give yet, so I'm going to
Yeah.
assume you're going to do a good job based on some of the other stuff. But even on some of those, it's like I've been at some of those talks where I'm like, dude, land the plane, like
Yeah.
land the plane, like you are up in the clouds, dude. Like
Mm-hmm.
nobody's gotten any practical information out of this. They all understand. Great, now we understand how Redis works behind the scenes. How do
Yeah.
I apply that to my common use case, my problem? And so that is a challenge too as a conference organizer, I'm sure, just trying to find, yes, the people who are giving technical talks, but those that are going to be really useful to the audience as well.
Yeah. It's a very difficult thing because people have said to me in the past, either directly or anonymously through our NPS surveys, that like the talks are not technical enough. I'm like, I understand that, but you have to understand there are 400 people in the room,
Yeah.
and like they need to get some value out of it. We can't drill into the innards of eloquent in 30 minutes. Even if we put on like a 60-minute talk, talking about the innards of eloquent for 60 minutes is going to be very drab for a larger percentage of people than are going to find it interesting in most cases.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, yes, they're technical talks, but they're also, as you say, that they have actionable takeaways. That here are some things that I have done. Speaker A, B, C. Like I've done this thing in this context for this reason. This is what worked. This is what didn't work. And going from there. So it's
Yep.
a, it is a challenge, and I will. I've got like an inner circle of people that I will vaguely say, given these two talks, what is more interesting to you? You know,
Yeah.
I
Yep.
can't, and I won't say, what is the, I might say the title, or I might give like a snippet of the abstract. And like, given these two related topics, like which is more interesting to you?
Yeah.
Um, but for the most part, it's like live by the sword, die by the sword. I put the schedule together, and I hope, generally speaking, that it all comes together. And I think I have the benefit of all of the groundwork that like Laracon US and Laracon EU have done over 10 years now. That there is a level of expectation when you take the stage at a Laracon, that there is a quality level, and there's going to be some pizzazz to the presentation. There's going to be some energy in giving the presentation, that the slides are going to be great. There's just all of these things that are a baseline inherently. They're like unspoken, but when you look, you go, this is where I need to be, to stick the landing. So yeah, and I think broadly speaking, like it is few and far between where they don't meet that. And that's like sometimes when you bring in someone that isn't like from the community, that they don't, you know, they're just like, this is the conference talk that I gave at this conference and this conference and this conference.
Yeah.
And you go, oh, that's interesting at the surface level. But then when it gets presented, it's like, oh, it's not quite. So anyway,
Yep.
that has been the focus. That and I've been doing cold outreach, like sales. That's been an interesting experience, like just doing sponsorship things, which has
Yeah.
been. I was talking to Jack yesterday, and I said, I think I have figured out how this works. The way it works is that you just keep emailing people like not every day, but like once a week, follow up with them, just chasing up, just, with reason, of course, but like you just keep emailing them until they either say yes or go away, you
Yeah,
know?
please stop. Yes.
Um, I have found that like sponsorship is a very difficult thing because often like keyword the things that you have to say in these kinds of emails are also the kinds of things that spammers are using. And it's like,
Yeah. Well,
you
I mean, you are technically spamming them.
technically
I mean, let's be
spamming,
real
right?
here.
Yeah.
You were doing exactly what those people are doing.
Yeah. And so, I've had a few people that like reach out to me and they're like completely nice about it. They're like, sorry, I didn't reply sooner. This ended up in spam. And this is not even just cold emails that I had sent, but it's also to people that like came to the website, filled out the I want to sponsor form, and then I've
Yeah,
emailed
yeah,
them directly.
yeah,
And because of the content of that email, so, and it's like the same with Twitter that has been spoken about for a long time. You've got to tweet and you've got to tweet again and you've got to tweet again and you've got to tweet again if you want your message to be seen because you don't know who's awake and what the algorithm is going to show you and
yeah,
all of this other stuff that it feels very repetitive to you because you're doing it over and over and over again, the same things. But I've tried to break it up at least, like the cold email, hey, we're doing this thing. I try and like look for companies that are in the sphere at least. You've been in the sphere for a long time. I see you doing more stuff. I would love to have you involved. And then there's like the time sensitive things like we're launching our brand very soon. I would love for you to be there at brand launch because obviously brand launch is when everyone's going to be on the website. Everyone's going to be looking. They're going to see that you're involved in the community. Tickets are going to go on sale. We want you to be there because everyone's going to be looking at the website, yada, yada, yada. So yeah, it's been an interesting thing. Um, you know, when we returned after COVID in 2023, the focus was on um, the speakers. Like, let's make this a really great experience for speakers to get them here, to get them on stage, to all of that kind of stuff. Last year, the focus was very heavily on attendees. Like, how do we make the event as good as it can be? The things that we do, the schedule that we put on, the networking that we do, the swag that we give away, like all of this stuff. Like that was a big focus last year. And I think the last piece of this equation for me as an organizer then is like, okay, now how do we bring the sponsors along for the ride? How do we
yeah,
engage them? How do we get attendees to engage with them? I know that Laracon US is very like you do the punch card thing and then the cards go in the bowl and then Aaron draws out the name and then you win a prize. We've not historically had a lot of sponsors that like that even want to exhibit, that they don't want to set up a booth.
really.
We've had sponsors, yeah, they're just like, yeah, we want to sponsor, we want to be involved in the community, but we don't like we've got nothing to sell. We don't want to,
Yeah, yeah.
it's
We don't stand to benefit from this really from people that are going to be attending the conference. Maybe,
yeah,
maybe people outside of the conference who, I don't know.
yeah. So it's
That's
it's always
interesting
been an
though. Like,
interesting one. But like this
yeah,
year we're gonna have like 4 or 5 sponsors that are actually gonna be exhibiting, which is really good. I had one sponsor get back to me yesterday and they're like, we're going to go ahead with it. We're just trying to decide like which tier we want. And they gave some like really great unsolicited feedback talking about like their actual ROI in that their brand, particularly like they were interviewing people for jobs who had heard about them specifically because of their presence at Laracon. Like people that had progressed to technical interviews with this company because they met at Laracon. And I think that's a key thing as well, is that the kind of people that are going to Laracon are the kinds of people that are like more likely to do this.
yeah,
And oh well, if I'm here and this company's here, there might be someone that I would want to work for in the future. So it was really great to get that feedback, and I need to do more on that side of things to really foster those relationships with our sponsors moving forward. So looking forward to
that's
doing that.
tricky. Yeah, it's tricky.
It is.
Like, because they want to be there, they want to get the their money's worth for like what they've paid for. Not that that's the only thing. Certainly, like I think in any sponsor who's going to be sponsoring, there's a definitely an aspect of just goodwill. Being a part of the community and like giving back. I suppose that there's certainly a big
Yeah.
piece of that. Um, but outside of that, you're trying to make sure that the sponsors are happy to do it and that they want to do it again the next year. So you're trying to
Yeah.
make sure that they feel like it was worth their time and worth their money and worth their effort to get there to exhibit and do all those things. So, and it depends on what they're selling too. If it's like PHP
Mm,
Storm or, JetBrains or whatever,
mm,
um, you know, yeah, it's just it's interesting. Some of it does depend too on like how well they exhibit, right? It's like sort of you're giving them the spot here. You have
mm.
access to all of these people. Now
Yeah.
it's kind of up to you to like I've got the people all gathered. They're right here, right in front of your face. So
Hmm.
you need to give them a reason to stop by and say hello, right? So
Yeah.
give away something really good. It's not enough to be there. You have to motivate the people who are going to be there, or go sit down at the table and introduce yourself and do that stuff. So
Mhm.
it's hard though, because I understand that the people who are working at these organizations, unless you're large enough to have a specific person that you send as like your liaison to these
Yeah. You're
conferences,
not going to send your
sometimes it's
developers to stand at the booth necessarily.
right, exactly, because they're not going to be the people who are going to want to talk to others. So
But
anyway,
like,
it's a challenge.
yeah, I mean, I did the math on this company yesterday, and you think if they've hired 5 people, right, that have been at Laracon that they met through Laracon, and then you look at what it costs to use a tech recruiter,
Yeah.
right? You're looking anywhere between
Well,
17 and 22%. Like for
Well,
five
and also
people,
not only that, but you know that the people that you're getting that are at Laracon are the
100%,
top tier because they are wanting to continue their education in Laravel.
100%.
They're wanting to invest their time and effort and energy and monies into
Hmm.
getting better, into being a part of the community. So those are the
Mm,
people you actually want.
yeah.
And so yeah, I mean, certainly talent, acquisition is expensive, but it's also there's no guarantees either. You're sort of just taking their
Yeah.
word for it.
Yeah.
Whereas with like if you're hiring somebody from Laracon, you at least have an a first indicator to say like these people are serious about their career. So
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, I did the back of the napkin math. And like if you're looking at 17 to 22% of like a senior developer salary, you're talking nearly $200,000 that you're paying to a
right,
recruiter for 5 people. Or, you're spending 6, 10, 15 grand to advertise at Laracon.
yeah.
Like
If you're looking
it's
for developers, if that is
if that's
your
what you're doing.
lane, then it's
Yeah.
definitely worth it. Yeah, exactly.
Like it's very hard. I've been very fortunate with the sponsors and the partners that we've worked with over the years that like they just want to come to support the community. And I think that's fantastic. It's as we're starting to kind of become more visible and to grow the conference, it's like I'm starting to think now, okay, well, how do we actually position this that when a big sponsor inevitably asks, what am I getting out of this? I've got a good answer for them, you know?
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, it's more work to be done on that front, I think. But
It's like one of those like convince your boss sheets. It's like the one
yeah,
pager, where it's like, hey, these are the benefits to coming to the conference as an attendee.
mm,
You basically need the same thing for people who are hoping to sponsor.
yeah,
I was going to say two things real quick. So, speaking of technical talks, one of the things that we didn't do this time, but that we will probably try and do next time, we actually got feedback on our last North Meet South episode
mm,
from our good friend David Hemphill, basically saying, "Yeah, I really enjoyed you guys just getting into the weeds on a specific refactoring of what you'd been working on, Michael, at work." And we said, okay, well, I think we'd like to try and do a bit more of that. And so, in coming weeks, you can hope to look forward to us talking a little bit more about specific problems. I'd like to say, Michael, this is a problem I've focused on in the last 2 weeks that we solved using this sort of method or this sort of refactoring
mhm,
pattern, or this is a challenge we ran into and we had to extract to this service. And here's kind of where we did our validation layer. And we passed in this instance, we passed the request all the way through to our domain, instead of extracting a DTO because blah, 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 whatever. So
mhm,
those sorts of things. I would love
yeah,
to focus on those sorts of things in the coming weeks. The other thing I was going to say is if you are a speaker looking to get into the game and you're sort of like, man, I just don't know, where can I start? Like, what sort of technical talk would I do? I would say that a really good place to go look actually, it'd be a site like refactoring.guru. So Refactoring Guru is a really great site that has all sorts of different refactoring patterns. It explains what it is. It
Mm.
says like, hey, here are a bunch of different types of refactorings you might do based on like if you have dirty code or you've got cluttered code, or you want to you see these certain code smells and you're wanting to come up with a better strategy to handle that. It's also got different design patterns spelled out in plain English. And some of these books, like the Gang of Four
Mm.
books, the design
They're a bit
patterns, I
dry.
think, yeah, exactly. It's a bit dry and it could be difficult. There's no illustrations really. It's a bunch of diagrams and things like that, and that's all fine. But Refactoring Guru does a really good job of taking these design patterns and breaking them down to simple English and giving you examples that are sort of language agnostic as well. And so I would say if you're looking through that and you find something that's inspiring to you and you're like, I could really use that, you take it home, you implement it yourself in your own code base, and then you take your lessons learned and you come up with something you could present to other people based on what you've learned, right? I
Mhm.
find it's not super helpful to just take, again, and this is sort of that like, okay, you have the technical talk, but then you also have the application piece of it. This is why I would suggest finding a pattern here, trying to implement it, figuring out what the challenges are, where are the edges of this solution, and then
Mhm.
bringing back your learnings and presenting those as a talk. So if that's you, if you're sort of like, I've always wanted to give a talk, but I don't really know what I would talk about, this is a great way to kind of just get your like dip your toe into the water of like, is this something I think I could do? And you can even borrow from some of these things, but it gives you a starting point to start researching and start learning and start using some of these design patterns and then present them. And those are very applicable to a large audience of people. And so um, yeah, I think it's a just free advice for you, my friends. Free
Yeah.
advice.
Good advice too. I think good place to start. Well, I mean, just the things that you are doing in your day job in general are the best places to kind of come out with that stuff. And yeah, it'd be good to dive into that refactoring that we did speak about before and that I
Hmm.
have actually gone deep on and done. And I will be merging that pull request today, actually, because
Exciting.
yeah, we can talk about testing that stuff as well because I know that we talked a while back about how we're testing that. We've got like the high level smoke test, but we have
Yep.
recently discovered that those have not provided us quite enough assurance into what is happening. So I'm going to talk about I can talk about if you don't have anything else next time on what we did to kind of bolster that testing story as well.
Awesome. One other thing that you could probably look forward to that I would love to talk about as well in future episodes is we do quite a bit of work with text messaging. So that can be a challenge. Twilio is great. They don't really have a sandbox, right? They are no Stripe. And so getting things set up with Twilio in a way that is testable and is easy to interact with and iterate on can be very challenging because, especially for developers on the team, if they don't have a great way to set up their own Twilio account and you don't maybe have like a test short code. Short codes are very expensive. So how do you test with a short code if you don't have a spare short code? What's you're talking about thousands of dollars a month just to test that particular thing. So how do you do that?
Mhm.
So we'll talk about some gateway pattern stuff that we're using on that. But also we recently launched a SMS text to pay sort of thing, and we wanted some of our higher senior people who don't have the capacity to run this locally. We wanted them to be able to test it as well. Well, you
Mhm.
either get them set up with the development environment or you produce something else for them. And so essentially, what Wilbur Powery did is he was able to fake some of our responses and was able to extract the engine that we're using to basically build this little chat bot. And he created this Livewire component that allows you to select the phone number that you're going to be texting from, which is just like a mock, right? And then the scenario that you're hoping to test, and then
Mhm.
the user story that you're looking to test. So in this case, I want somebody that has save payment method set up. Or I want somebody who had a previous payment plan set up, or I want
Mhm.
somebody that's got all those things, or I want these error states, right? And with this little LiveWire component that'll sort of set up the world. And then
Nice.
we just share an ngrok URL, and then the people at the higher level can kind of go through and play with it, try and break it. What about if I go this direction? Oh, that makes sense, or this doesn't. And so it was a great way to get some high level feedback, but would have been impossible if we didn't have a way to sort of extract or separate those things where
Hmm.
Twilio is over here, and that's fine, but our domain and the way that we're actually treating it is over here on this side. And the Twilio is just a plugin that we're using to handle certain responses. So anyway, love to talk about that in the future too. So you can look forward to that in the next couple weeks as we can continue on. And Michael, you said something about using AI to sort of like transcribe and pull out these things that we've said we're going to do
Yeah.
and provide some continuity between shows. Because many times we'll be like, hey, we're going to do this next time. And then we're like, what would we say we're going to do next time?
Yeah.
So
It'd be good. It'd be good to go through that kind of stuff and just scratch an itch to
absolutely.
use this AI stuff. And like I started playing around with, I
Prism?
think it's 11 is the thing, to do some like transcription stuff, and that seemed to work pretty
Oh,
well.
okay.
So yeah, 11 11 Labs, one of those.
11 Labs.
There's an
11
11 in there,
Labs.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Good
So
stuff. Well, hey,
yeah,
man, if you don't get anything else, we can wrap this one up.
let's do it. Let's wrap it.
All right. Episode 176, folks. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. You can find show notes for this episode at northmeetsouth.audio/176. Hit us up on Twitter or on X or on Blue Sky, all the things at Michael Dorinda, at Jacob Bennett, or at North South Audio. Of course, if you like the show, we'd really appreciate it if you'd rate it up in your podcatcher of choice. 5 stars would be incredible and amazing. Until next time, folks, we'll see you.
Oh.